this conference was on the future of the African American past. And first question I have for you, Lonnie, is why, in the midst of all the chaos of opening a new museum, being on the mall, all the things that it takes to open a large institution like this, why would you get involved in planning a conference?
Because I'm not that smart. I think the reality is that scholarship is the engine of the Smithsonian. And it was really crucial for me to demonstrate that this new museum, first of all, had access to the best scholarship, but through its work could make that scholarship accessible. So for me, crafting this conference was really a way to say, to foreshadow, here is how central this institution will be to both generating new scholarship, making scholarship accessible, and giving visibility to both young and senior scholars. So all of that went into thinking of trying to do this at the same time we were opening a museum.
That's interesting because for the AHA, in some ways, it's coming from the other direction. That for us, there's this long reputation of being an organization that could only speak to scholars. So for us, this was a great opportunity to have a wider audience and to work with an institution that is both a scholarly institution and a public institution. So this was just, I think, a tremendous opportunity, clearly, for both of us.
Well, and I think the notion of working with the AHA, recognizing that there were people you knew that we didn't know, that you were able to bring into the mix. And I think that in some ways, by hosting it at the Smithsonian, what we were really saying to all the scholars is that the chasm that once existed between those that labored in museums and those that labor in the academy, that we were trying to close that chasm and to say that in essence we're all made better by this collaborative work together, that scholars get their work in front of millions of people. We make sure that part of our goal is to ensure that that good scholarship is really recognized and accepted by those that either visit or go online to the Smithsonian.
Well, and one of the problems we had is that there was just too much good scholarship. And over the last 2 generations, the whole field has blossomed. And it was easier for us, I think, in some ways, that we built on that conference in 1983 at Purdue on the future of African American history that our friend and colleague Darlene Clark Hine organized. But since then, so many people have done such good work that it was extremely difficult for us to figure out who we were going to invite and how we were going to organize this.
Well, it was so interesting looking back at that 83 conference that Darlene and others were so instrumental in, was this notion that they were trying to say that over the last 20 years from the 60s and 70s, the field was now solid, that it really had a number of people in different parts of the academy. And for us to be able to say that now, many years later, we're still able to say now this field is one of the most active fields in the academy. And that for us, the best thing that bringing this together did was to simply say that this was no longer an ancillary field, but a central field in understanding who we are as Americans, not just who we are as African Americans.
And that's why it was so important for this museum to be on the mall, and so important for the American Historical Association to join with the museum in this kind of conference that brings together the public and the academy in a central field of history.
And it just reminded us of the role a museum can really play, because we weren't open, and yet people came in part because they wanted to support the museum, and it obviously translated to when we opened to the millions of people.
Well, that's what really took me aback was the interest of the public in this scholarly conference. I showed up one morning at the wrong door, and it was raining, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and there were people already lined up to attend this conference. And I generally am not accustomed to the general public standing in a line in the rain to listen to a bunch of scholars.
And I think that's one of the joys of the Smithsonian, is that people will come and wrestle with issues, wrestle with scholars that they might not in other places, because they trust the Smithsonian. And obviously for us to pair with AHA, 2 very trusted brands, but even I was so surprised and pleased that they kept coming and they didn't go away.